At 8:12 on a Tuesday morning, your phone lights up with a photo from a hotel ballroom. Daniel is standing beneath blue stage lights, holding a glass plaque. Vice President, age 35. 3 messages later, Priya announces that she made partner. Someone in the group chat writes, "Your turn." You look across the room at your old security badge beside a screwdriver on the workbench. It stopped opening office doors 6 months ago. You are 35 years old. You do not have a job. You are not searching for one. And for the first time since college, you do not feel late. By noon, the money you once used to measure progress will have paid for another hour that belongs completely to you. But that hour was not purchased on the day you resigned. It was purchased in smaller pieces over 12 years, through decisions that looked unimpressive while everyone around you kept climbing. At 23, you earned $86,000 a year as a junior data analyst. Your net worth was $11,400. Most of it sat in a retirement account you barely understood. Your friends were moving upward in visible ways. Better apartments, newer cars, graduate programs with impressive names, weekend photos from cities you had never visited. You were doing the same until one Sunday night when you divided everything you had spent during the previous year by 12. The result was $4,000 a month. Then you asked a question that changed the meaning of your paycheck. How much of this spending made your life better, and how much of it simply made your progress visible? You kept travel, good groceries, and the gym you actually used. But you attacked recurring costs because recurring costs repeated the decision for you. You moved 15 minutes farther from downtown and saved $700 a month. You kept your paid-off car. You stopped upgrading devices that still worked. When your first raise arrived, you increased your investments before the larger paycheck had time to become normal. That first year, you invested $36,000. It did not feel like freedom. It felt like a smaller number on a spending app and a larger number on a screen you checked too often. But that money had already started becoming something else. At your spending level, $36,000 represented 9 months of your life. 9 months that no future employer fully owned anymore. At 25, your salary rose. Your lifestyle barely moved. You invested $42,000. At 26, you invested $48,000. The numbers increased, but the more important change was psychological. Your career was no longer the destination. It was the engine financing an exit you had not told anyone about. Your friends interpreted promotions as proof that the climb was working. You interpreted them as a chance to shorten the climb. Daniel leased a car after becoming a manager. Priya moved into a building with a rooftop pool. You celebrated with them because their choices were not mistakes. They were buying what they valued. You were buying something that could not be photographed yet. At 28, your investment accounts crossed $250,000. The number was large enough to feel serious and small enough to feel useless. It could not replace your salary. It could not protect you from every emergency. It could not explain why you had declined a more expensive apartment for the 3rd year in a row. Then your company eliminated 12% of its workforce. Your name was not on the list. Daniel's was. He had a new title, a larger apartment, and 4 months of expenses in cash. Within a week, the conversations in the group chat changed from promotions and travel to recruiters, severance, and health insurance. That was the first moment you understood what your portfolio had become before it became retirement. It had become the ability to remain calm. You still went to work the next morning, but the building felt different. The badge at the entrance no longer looked like security. It looked like permission that could be revoked. From that year forward, you kept 1 year of essential expenses outside the market. The rest stayed invested across diversified, low-cost funds. You did not know what markets would do next. You only knew you did not want one company, one manager, or one economic cycle to control every part of your future. At 30, you were offered a director role in another city. The salary was $35,000 higher. The title impressed everyone you told. But the job required longer weeks, a costly move, and a lifestyle that would absorb most of the raise. You spent a Saturday comparing 2 futures. In one, you accepted the role, upgraded your life, and reached financial independence near 40. In the other, you stayed, invested more than half of your take-home pay, and kept 35 within reach. You declined the promotion. For several months, it felt like failure. You had chosen a future result over a present signal, and present signals are what other people can see. Then the market fell. By 31, you had built a portfolio worth a little more than $600,000. During the downturn, it dropped by roughly $120,000. That loss was larger than your original annual salary. For the first time, the plan stopped feeling intelligent and started feeling dangerous. You had spent years refusing things you could have enjoyed, and the market had erased several years of those decisions in a few months. You opened the account at night. You ran new projections. You imagined selling everything and waiting until the world felt safe again. But safety was not a date on a calendar. Selling would turn a temporary decline into a permanent decision. So you kept the emergency fund. You kept working. You kept investing according to the plan. Not because you knew the recovery would be quick, but because the strategy had been built for uncertainty, not for perfect conditions. The account recovered before your confidence did. And when it did, something unexpected happened. At 33, the portfolio's annual growth in a strong year exceeded everything you spent during that entire year. For more than a decade, you had traded time for money and moved part of that money into investments. Now the direction had begun to reverse. The money was producing more money than your life consumed. That was the mathematical turn. Your contributions still mattered. Your salary still mattered. But they were no longer carrying the entire structure. Compounding had become a second worker, unreliable from month to month, powerful over long periods, and completely indifferent to your job title. By 34, your total invested assets were approaching $1.3 million. About $921,000 had come from your contributions over 12 years. The rest was modeled growth, built unevenly through rising markets, falling markets, dividends, and time. You did not choose a retirement date because the balance looked exciting. You calculated the life the balance had to support. Your expected annual spending after work was $42,900. That included housing, food, transportation, taxes, health coverage, home repairs, travel, and a margin for ordinary surprises. You priced the boring parts because freedom built on missing expenses is only a temporary illusion. A portfolio of $1.32 million made that first-year spending equal to roughly 3.25%. That was lower than the 4% starting guideline you had studied because your horizon could be far longer than a traditional 30-year retirement. It was not a guarantee. No percentage could promise that. It was a decision to begin with more margin and remain flexible if markets, inflation, or your life changed. You also made sure the money was not trapped behind one door. Part sat in retirement accounts. Part sat in a taxable brokerage account. Part sat in cash. The portfolio was not one giant number. It was a bridge between today and the decades ahead. When the balance finally crossed $1.32 million, nothing dramatic happened. There was no music, no message from the bank, no sudden feeling that you had won. You worked for another 3 months. You updated the health insurance estimate. You reduced the assumed return. You modeled an early market decline. You asked what expenses would be cut first if the plan came under pressure. You wrote down the conditions that would make you earn income again. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, you placed your security badge in a padded envelope and left it on your manager's desk. People asked where you were going next. You said, "I'm taking my time back." They smiled as if it were a metaphor. 6 months later, retirement does not look like permanent vacation. Some mornings feel expansive. Others feel empty. Work used to decide when the day began and which hours belonged to other people. Removing that structure created freedom and responsibility. You had to learn how to build a Tuesday. You began repairing old furniture in the room where your laptop used to stay open after dinner. You volunteer 2 afternoons a week. You cook slowly. You exercise before you are exhausted. You call your parents before there is a reason to worry. None of those activities looks as impressive as making vice president. That is the point. Your friends kept climbing, and some of them genuinely loved the view. Daniel found another role and now manages a larger team. Priya earned the partnership she had worked toward for years. Their success is real, but so is yours. The difference is that they continued turning time into titles, income, and influence. You spent 12 years turning income back into time. The sacrifices were not the dinners you skipped or the car you did not lease. The real cost was choosing a form of progress that remained invisible for years. It was allowing people to underestimate you. It was watching others receive applause while your reward accumulated silently in accounts no one else could see. And the reward was not doing nothing. It was having the authority to decide what deserves your next hour. At 8:12, the group chat is still open. Beneath Daniel's promotion photo, the message remains, "Your turn." You pick up the old security badge from the workbench. Once, that rectangle of plastic meant access, identity, and proof that your career was moving. Now it is only plastic. You place it in a drawer, turn off the phone, and return to the chair you are repairing. Your friends kept climbing because the ladder still led somewhere they wanted to go. You stepped off because your money had already become solid ground. Subscribe for more stories about what money becomes when it stops being a scoreboard and starts becoming your life.